In this episode of the in this episode, I'll talk about Obsidian, the tool that made me completely change my workflow and the way I write articles, notes, and pretty much everything else. We'll also cover some of the new features that I really love and I'd like you to know about. Let's get started. All right. So welcome back to another episode of the Toolbox. And I'm going to start off by going through some of the tools that I'm super excited about. As usual, you can put some comments in the chats. Make sure that you let me know that you can hear me, because that's always an issue sometimes when we start these. I'm just getting started with these, and I see that there's some people in there. So I like going through a lot of different tools that I am very excited about. A lot of these I do try out. And some of them are things that I would really like to get into. So I'm going to share some of these with you. Just make sure that you can connect through either YouTube or LinkedIn Learning, or LinkedIn actually itself. There is a link in LinkedIn Learning about this. So that's how you connect. And I'm going to start out by going through one tool that you can see right here that I'm pretty excited about. I just discovered it the other day, called Flat Data. So this tool helps you explore how to work with data in Git and GitHub. What's cool about it is that it essentially gives you a bunch of tools to create an action that you can use to query some data. So if you use an API, but you like to use some of the data maybe on a static site, that is definitely problematic, because something like 11T will take data and let you process it, but it'll either take like all of the data and processes all of it, or you can programmatically control how much data gets retrieved. But this actually makes it possible for you to create a GitHub action that takes care of the All right, and I'm hopefully back. And just give me some feedback to see if you can hear me now. Hopefully, yeah, I see the bars on the audio channel, so hopefully you guys can hear me well. Let's see. Oh, this is Obsidian. So yeah, just let me know in the chat. It looks like I'm getting some some sort of feedback on the not feedback, but a visual sort of bar on the audio. So hopefully this will work. Yes. All right. So I guess this sort of stuff is probably common to everyone doing a live demo, so I apologize. All right, so let's get back into it. So I was talking about, let's go ahead and share my other screen with you so you can see this tool called Flat Data. So let me just start from the beginning on this. So Flat Data is this tool that has a bunch of different parts to it that allows you to sort of grab data. So think about how you would in an application do like a fetch command to grab data from an API. You normally do that dynamically, right? But when you're working with a static website, so like something like Gatsby or something like 11T, which I use on my own personal blog, that data grabbing part has to be done at the time of the build so that it creates all the HTML files for you. So if you're working with something like GitHub, if you're hosting everything at GitHub, that's a problem because you want that fetch to happen as before you deploy. So as part of the build, you want it to fetch the data and you want it to get the latest data, but sometimes you need to schedule that at different times so that you get like the best and latest data. So that is what this tool is for. And as I mentioned, it has three different parts. It has the GitHub action. So there's a tool that is actually a VS Code plugin that allows you to get the data. So this is one part. And then that tool asks you several questions. And the questions essentially, let me see, I don't know. See, you see the Visual Studio Code plugin here. This will actually generate the GitHub action that then you plug into your, into GitHub. And then the questions that it asks you. So I think there's like a demo here. Yeah, you start off by creating this data action, and you can see that it asks you a number of questions. How often do you want to run this? What's the API that you want to fetch? And just other traditional fetch sort of things. And then it actually outputs the YAML for you. So this is what GitHub Actions would use. And then you can sync this up with GitHub and run it as an action scheduled onto your website. So if you actually bring that into your project, when you push when you push the content, it'll automatically create the sort of the cron job that creates and runs this action every so often. So this is pretty cool. And then once you get done with that, then this will actually send or output a file onto your server that then you can use to create part of the build or to have that data. So I have done this manually with GitHub Actions. This is just sort of a nice interface to take care of that. So that's pretty awesome. I love this one. Very excited about it. Let's try something else. So I got flat data. And another one that I really loved is I'm always like sharing little snippets of code. Clearly, I think that's probably just part of my job or not something that necessarily everybody has to do. But a lot of times you just want to send somebody like a snippet of what you're doing. And so this is sort of a tool that does that automatically for you within Visual Studio Code. So the way that you usually do that is you find some code either on the net or something that you created that's in your code, and then you like copy it, and you can go to several sites that will create this for you. But this allows you to very quickly go ahead and do the screenshot directly from Visual Studio Code. So it's a little bit customizable. I feel like they're just getting started. So you can save SVGs or PNGs, which I like SVGs, just the quality of the text kind of remains. So I prefer SVGs. And then you can either do one of three actions. You can copy the screenshots to the clipboard or open this or just directly send it into something like Twitter. I wish it had a LinkedIn option, but right now what I can do is just go ahead and download it and then or copy it. I actually also copy it to the clipboard. So let me see if I can show you this. Let's see. So I'm going to open up a new, whoa, this is really large. I'm going to open up a new Visual Studio window here. And I'm going to just see I'll just create a new file. So, and to make sure that this will sort of show me the syntax highlighting, I have to check the type down here to HTML, and then that gives me access to something like Emmet, which lets me do these cool shortcuts. I showed you guys last week how to do this. And then I can go ahead and just type in some HTML here. So I'll do some quick Emmet sort of demo. Headline, not going to be the most exciting code here, and I'll do like lorem ipsum text, maybe like 5 lines. So this is the least exciting code that you'll ever share with somebody, right? But what I can do here, and hopefully I have this extension loaded up in this browser. So what I can do is go to my command palette and type in snip. So I don't know, insert snippet. No, this is not it. So I may not have it. So actually, I'll show you how to install it. So snip. Right. So you go directly into your extensions. You can also go to the website and click on a button and it'll install it. So now that it's installed, you can see that I should have it here. Snipped. Right, and you can just go directly to take a screenshot, and it's that easy. You get the screenshot right away. So it's probably like whenever you need to just share some code with somebody, fastest way to do it. Like maybe you're in a Teams call and you don't want to like have them jump into your code with with VS Code, and you just want to send them a piece of code. So you could just download this or just copy into the clipboard and then just paste into your conversation. So pretty sweet. And I do love that it's SVG, which means that the quality will always remain for these things. So that's tool number 2. Let's check out another one. So another thing that happens, especially I do a lot of work in Bootstrap, and really any other framework will do this thing where you have to create a lot of sort of snippets of code inside other snippets of code. And I often end up with a problem that I call dividus. Like you end up with like maybe 4 to 10 different divs, and you're like not really sure what div is closing which element. There's a lot of tools that can kind of help with that, but this is one that I love because it's actually just telling you the class name, or it will tell you the tag or the ID of the element that this is closing. And where this comes in super handy is when you're trying to figure out, is that like enough divs? Like was 9 divs enough, or do I need to add a 10th one? Here you can visually see which div this is closing. So this is called HTML and tag labels. So if you just go to the link, and this show will have links in the notes, all the links that you want for this. Actually, you can go to my blog, rabo.org, and all these links will be in there with a write-up of what I'm doing. So we'll just open Visual Studio Code and make sure that that's installed. All right, so I may need to close this out and reopen it again. So let's save this. All right, so let's try that out. Maybe it just needs a restart in order to work. So let's try opening up this text. Yes, I trust you definitely right now. It looks like it's not quite doing. I may need to like restart Visual Studio Code, but I have it actually in my other machine, and it works so great, especially when you have a project that has a lot of divs. So I'm sorry I couldn't show you the actual HTML and tag labels. There it was. Tag labels. Yeah. So once you get it all installed, it'll do exactly this. It'll just tell you every class and ID. And it's perfect for, a lot of other tools kind of show you like they'll do this kind of thing. Well, they'll vertically show you a line, or some of them will color code. But if you don't have enough divs, that doesn't really help you, because it just showing you what it thinks is the div that goes with it, but it doesn't show you what class you're actually closing. So a lot of times here, if you add another div, you can really quickly find out whether or not you're solving the problem by adding another div or not. So anyways, that's another tool. Let's try something else. So this is one of those things that is pretty amazing. This is part of something else. So recently, GitHub announced that GitHub announced that that the CodeSpaces had finally been launched as a product. So CodeSpaces is essentially Visual Studio Code in the browser, right? So you can connect to a copy of Visual Studio Code, and the cool thing about it is that it starts up super quick, and you're able to sort of play around with some code quickly. And what that did is open up all these possibilities that you can work with. So let me try installing this while I'm talking about. So one of the things that you can do is you can go to any Visual Studio Code. I'm sorry, you can go to any code spaces or any site really on GitHub. So if we go to Planet of the Web, hopefully this will work. You can go to any repo now and just go ahead and hit the period button on your keyboard, and it'll launch that repo as in the browser using Visual Studio Code. That is flipping amazing, right? So just go to any repo, hit period. You'll get Visual Studio Code of that repo started up into your browser, which is amazing, right? Now, the other option that you can do here is if you have a URL to a repo, like now, this is great for opening, but what if you want to share this with somebody, right? So let's, I'm sorry, let's make sure that I'm sharing my screen here so you can see what I've done. I went to, maybe I could do it again. So I went to just one of my repos here, and I'm in my list of repositories when I click here, right? And I'm going to go to one of my first repos. I can make, oh, no, that's actually nice big. I can click on this repo right here, and all I'll do is hit period. And now this is going to open up Visual Studio Code or a copy of Visual Studio Code of my repo, right? And it's everything that I can do in local Visual Studio Code, I can do here. So I can get a terminal, and it looks like in this environment, that's not available, but I can open up a terminal and do like a live preview and work on my project. I can start working with somebody else online on the project. And all I did was just hit period on a specific project. So if you want to share a link, though, what you want to do is, so now if I want to share this repo as a Visual Studio Code environment, all I have to do is just change the top level domain from .com to .dev. And now you can copy that link and send it to somebody, and they'll jump straight into the Visual Studio Code environment of that repo's code. Flipping awesome. So that in itself is really amazing. Now, what somebody else did, and this is even more exciting, is they took it a step further and they made it so that you can create essentially like a CodePen environment directly using this. So if you go to there's a couple of projects involved. One of the main one is called CodeSwing. And CodeSwing is an extension, right, that lets you create sort of a playground within, within a Visual Studio Code. So if you have you can essentially create what would become a code pen in here, and it's like a code playground, right? So that's what this extension does. There's also another extension that actually called Code Tour that is associated, that where you're seeing here. Code Tour lets you create sort of notes on your code that will walk somebody through the code for you. What's sort of cool about what happens now with with CodeSpaces being available to everyone, now you can just go to a repo and start up a playground immediately. So you may be asking yourself, well, I can already do that like in like I can already do that with CodePen. What's the big deal about being able to create like a CodeSwing with a Code Tour? Well, definitely Code Tour is a little bit more interesting, but I'm just going to show you. So I'm going to go to this URL. Notice that it has a .dev extension right here. And I'm just going to go to it. And now I've given somebody a environment, right? And what's cool also is that if it notices that you don't have the extension loaded up in your CodeSpaces, it'll actually ask you, do you want to load this extension so that it can run this thing? And now you have essentially what's a code pen with this code tour experience that is all managed by GitHub. So you can create branches, you can run things. Like one of the good examples that I'm going to be using this for is I'm doing a course on Tailwind. Tailwind CSS just released a feature called what the heck is it called? It's called JIT. So as the just-in-time compiler, and the just-in-time compiler essentially lets you um, it rewrites the CSS that is going to be output for an HTML document or a folder of HTML documents based on the classes that are in those HTML document. It's pretty sweet. Now, CodePen can't handle something like that because at least not that I've seen. So it can't like be running a process manually that automatically rewrites the CSS. So it does have some ways of processing like Sass, but it doesn't have this JIT compiler built in. Don't care because now I can just create, a CodeSwing in a repo, have it have the code that I want to show somebody with perhaps like a tour like this. And then that means that I can just easily install any sort of build tools that I am demoing perhaps in my tutorials, and just take somebody directly to this environment. And of course, this is all like fully editable. So if I type something in here, it's a rock, paper, scissors game. So I'm not sure. So I guess you choose one of these things, and you can see like all the code is in here, but this is an interactive environment. And so that just gives you another way of not just, sharing code, but then sharing an environment that is like a teaching environment or allows people to demo your code. And you can see here that the files are, HTML, CSS file. There's an extra main tour file that actually tells you as you're going through the code, sort of highlights certain things. And this is just a JSON file, right? And then there's a CodeSwing .json file that kind of figures out how things should be displayed. So super easy to set this up. And I think that it's really pretty amazing. Hopefully just another tool that you have in your pocket to be able to talk to somebody about code. All right, so super awesome. Again, don't worry about the links. I'll have them all if you just go to my blog, raybo.org. How am I doing on time? 1:24. That's perfect. All right, next up is something sort of new. I haven't had time to explore this too much, but this really piqued my interest. So Nextra is a Next.js-based static site generator. So in my blog, I use something called 11T that I think it's pretty awesome. However, it takes a lot of setup to get things working. The advantage of this thing is that Nextra, Next.js based. So Next.js is essentially like a React engine for creating apps and single page applications. So this static site generator takes that and lets you use Markdown to create a static website. Why is that cool? Well, you can use something called MDX. So MDX allows you to add essentially React code in your Markdown. So you can just add a function right in your Markdown, and it'll actually process it, which is pretty awesome. But it does have a lot of other sort of features. So by default, it'll create a sidebar for you. It'll handle the routing. So the single page sort of part of creating a website is the routing, like switching to different folders and stuff like that. It'll handle all the things that you normally would have to worry about creating yourself. It'll do like image compression for you automatically. So you can sort of just create an image and it'll handle creating like the multiple versions for different size things. It does I11N, which is, internalized routing out of the box. So it's this sort of, I love 11T, but this sort of, it's kind of an opinionated way of creating static sites based on Next.js, where you can have Markdown in, React in the Markdown files, and then it just publishes that in it. It's kind of quicker to get up and running with that. I'm looking forward to that. So looks like I'm not getting any other questions. I hope I didn't go offline and I'm just talking to myself here. So now the reason why I started this conversation or started the stream was to talk about this other tool called Obsidian. So Obsidian, I am a huge fan of any like markdown application. I can't tell you how many markdown editors I have downloaded in my life. It's been pretty much every time I see one, I go, wow, maybe this will be like the right thing for me to use to like, you know, write all the stuff that I need to write. But this one came out and I'm like, okay, another one. What's so cool about this one? So the main thing about Obsidian is that it gives you ways to link your documents. This is one of those things that sounds like an obvious thing, like an obvious feature. Why didn't anybody sort of think of linking, you know, your markdown files? Like, I think GitHub will do that if you put a link to another markdown file, but the links are HTML type links, right? A little bit sort of difficult to write. This offers just a different way of creating links, which allows you to do things like visualize your work and look at all the connections of your work. So if you can take a look at the website, you can see that there's this graph view that lets you visualize the relationships between all of the writing that you're doing. So it opens up, I mean, this is like writing in Word versus writing in Google Docs, right? In Google Docs, everything's online, interactive. Here, the big thing is that that ability to create connections just changes the way your brain works. About creating documents. It's super easy. All you do to create a connection to another document is hit the double brackets, like the double left brackets, and it'll actually try to find the document for you. Yeah, this is probably a good quote. Obsidian is life-changing. So it is similar to tools like, for example, Notion does some of this kind of organization and communication. So I think Notion is more of a tool for collaborating on documents. This is really what I find this extremely useful. And what I was looking for was a tool to help me write things better. The problem I have with Notion is that it doesn't let you it sort of stores everything in a database, whereas Obsidian assumes that you're going to be storing everything locally and that everything that you're putting in there is a markdown file. It also doesn't care what kind of things you put in them. So I'm just going to show you my Obsidian sort of workflow for how I'm doing things. So you could see that I'm actually, one of the things that I do is whenever I do one of these live streams, I write a blog post, and this is what you'll see with all of the you know, sort of images. And on my site, you'll get all the links to all of the tools that I talked about. And so this is how I write things. You know, whenever I'm writing things, I write them in Markdown. Like this, it's just easy for me to write. You can focus on the writing. Whenever you do have code, you just create it like this, triple dashes in Markdown, and then it appears like this, all syntax highlighted. And really pretty, and it'll publish like this on the website. One of the things that I love is that it has, when I write things, I did it on applications like Atom or Visual Studio Code. One of the things that I really didn't like is that those tools didn't have a spell checker. Really huge, because English isn't my second language, and I make spelling mistakes all the time. And I would often publish things, and I realized that I misspelled a ton of things, or a lot of times I'll be writing in Visual Studio Code, and then I'll go to LinkedIn to publish articles in the LinkedIn newsletter sort of section. And when I pasted the you know, my markdown or my you know, my text in there, it would, you know, I have like a spell checker, and it would just find every spelling mistake. That was a pain. So one of the things that I really like is that you can turn on spell checking for your documents, which is great. I think I don't have them on right now. And then you just write in Markdown. So you can actually see everything that I've talked about. Oh, that's actually the wrong image, so I'll need to switch that. So you can see here that, and I usually, this is actually before a show, I kind of write out what the article is going to be so that I know where I'm going. So this is the things that I'll be covering today. And so that's cool. The writing it's a fantastic editor for writing things, but that's not even the best part of the tool. So you'll notice that I threw my rabo.org website in there. This site actually has it's an 11T site. It has all the 11T things, but I can just focus on the writing part. So this is not a Visual Studio Code editor, so it's not for editing the non-junk. So if I try to even see any non-junk files, they're hidden by default. You can't show them. But that's the kind of thing I would want to open in Visual Studio Code. But here I can go to, say, my posts and take a look at another post. And then I can just look at, say, the video section and take a look at one of my videos and just kind of focus on the writing in 11T. So this is not even the coolest part. I'll show you how it's changed the way that I work. So for us, LinkedIn Learning, I'm a LinkedIn Learning instructor. So for us, every course begins with a TOC, like a table of contents that outlines what we're going to be doing. This is the course that I'm currently working on. And it essentially has a list of all the videos in Markdown. You could see that it's showing you everything that I'm going to do in this course. And I'm highlighting the new movies that I need to do. I can tag these. So I can, for example, add a new tag. This is actually a new video, whereas this is a update to a video that I've already done before. Notice that it is, if you're used to GitHub flavor Markdown, it has the ability to create to-do. So you can, and this is pretty smart. When I hit return, it automatically looks not that I'm not just doing a list, I'm actually doing a to-do. And say new video, right? And I can just hit Command Enter, and it'll toggle the little checkbox, which is pretty awesome. I'm not sharing long. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Okay. So, all right. So here's my TOC for this course. And notice that it's really smart. If I open up a new item, it'll just assume that I'm not just doing a list, but it's actually letting me do, it's actually giving me the checkbox. New video, thank you for letting me know. And then Command Enter just toggles that checkbox on and off. I can open up a preview version of this. So if you hit Command Enter, it'll actually show you the preview, and I can actually click on that and take a look at sort of the GitHub version of the to-do list here. So this is how I begin things whenever I'm doing a course. I begin with the outline, and I kind of make myself notes like this is a new video, this is another video and such. So that's cool, right? And another cool thing is actually, let me show you that I can, in preview mode, I have all these links, as you can see right here, right? And if I can actually click on these links, or I can just roll over them, and it'll show me a preview of the document that I am looking at. So that's pretty cool. Very quickly shows you visually what you're doing. And I can also just click on that document, and it'll just jump into that document and let me edit that document. I can hit the back key right here and go back into my document. So that's pretty awesome. And again, it's just super smart about how it approaches building these lists. So it's an improvement over you having to do them manually, like on GitHub or really any editor. All right, so that is pretty awesome. Now, let's check something else out. So the next thing that I do is I create myself like a Kanban board, right? And the Kanban board lets me look at this in a different sort of manner. So let's see, it's not showing me. Let's try so this is actually showing it to me as a Kanban board. So the Kanban is actually one of the many extensions. So by default, this comes with some core plugins. So you can see the File Explorer, search, all these things are sort of plugins that it comes with. Daily notes, it's really popular. Page preview, you can turn things on and off, so it gives you full control over everything. But then there's this entire sort of list of community plugins, and the Kanban board happens to be one. So you could toggle this off if it's bothering you, and I'm going to turn that back on. But there are tons of community plugins. This thing's, I think, a version right now is like 0.9 something, and it sorry, I'm reading the notes here. So you can, let's see, browse through community plugins. The most popular one is like a calendar. So this will help you if you have like a regular weekly sort of list of things that you need to do, then this will help you sort of organize that. This advanced tables is so cool. So, writing tables in Markdown is a little bit of a pain because you have to like create all these pipes and these underlines. This thing will automatically like create the table as you're typing it and readjust like the width of these little dashes, which is something that I end up wasting so much time in so that my tables look visually nice. So this thing will take care of it. Sliding panes, pretty cool. Templater, data. There's a ton of stuff. And mind map is pretty cool. So this will, although it's not interactive and lets you just quickly take an article and make a mind map out of it. So you could see that it just makes this kind of view, which I really love. That's another thing that I use. I mean, it doesn't right now, it doesn't let you rearrange the mind maps, right? And then there's lots of other. Here's a Kanban, which I installed and I turned on. So let's see if now I can take a look at this in the preview. So now the Kanban board is right here and I can go, okay, well, let's work on, let's say that I finished this one. I could just move it into the written part and I can bring this one up next. This is the one that I'm going to be prepping next. And then as I start recording these, I can move them in here. And then once they're done, I can move them in here. This is how I get things done. Like, this is how my brain works. I've never been able to sort of like use to-do lists because they're one-dimensional. So Kanban boards is two-dimensional, and it just helps you sort of focus what you're working on. So for example, in the prep section, this is the only, I usually keep my prep to the thing that I'm doing right now. So this is the, I should say preparation there, but this is what I'm working on currently. There should never be more than one of these. And then I just move this into the written section whenever I'm done with it. Fairly easy interface to like, let me move it back. So fairly easy interface to like add a card. You can put in the title and add another item in there. Super easy. So this gives you an interface. Now, because I didn't have this tool turned on at first, you may have noticed that this is really just Markdown. So I can click over here and say, open this is Markdown, and this is just Markdown. Notice that. So I screwed up this to just say prep. And as I'm typing this, it'll automatically update. If I had this preview on, it'll automatically, separation, see that it's dynamic. It's showing you the preview live. So yeah, I mean, it still has all the features. So I can still take a look at the different sort of files and click on them and go directly to those files so that, whenever I'm ready to work on something else, I switch over to this Kanban, go into my Kanban and move something else into prep, move something else, into written, or if I'm starting to record, then I'll move these into the recording side and I'll just jump in and out through this sort of Kanban board. And it's just, it's just Markdown. So that means, so one of the things that, okay, so probably the only thing that I don't like about Obsidian is that the editor isn't a coding editor. And I really love the ability to do multiple cursors. I do them all the time. So occasionally I want to open this in a good, and like, I want to say good editor, an editor with that feature. So you can say like, open this in default app. And now it will open up in whatever your default editor is. For me, that is Visual Studio Code. This opened up in a different window. So let's see if I can just move this window over. Hold on a second. It's on a completely different screen. So, okay, so here it is. And say that I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't really, the fact that these sort of links have the sort of chapter title, I don't really like those. So I'm just going to come in here and delete those because it's repetitive. Yeah, I could just go in there. Let me show you that. Because this is Markdown and Obsidian has a really cool sort of live preview. So as soon as I save this, I should see the changes automatically updating in my original. So did I save this to do? Am I to do? Yeah, so you see that I removed the sort of title. I mean, I actually like having those in there, so you could see that it put them back in there. So it's really quick to just jump into your editor and do any, if you have to, for example, if you have to jump in and fix, like say that I'm in my blog and I want to actually go do something in Nunjunks, which is a template engine, or write some JavaScript because I need to do something that is part of the JavaScript and the blog, which this isn't designed to work on. I could just quickly jump in there and it's just markdown. So if I want to add another category, yeah, all I have to do is just make another second level, level list here. Maybe I'll just call this other for right now, save this. And if you scroll this, now you'll have this other section right here. So sometimes it's just quicker to edit things in a fantastic editor. So this is really changing, there's tools that change your brain. And this is one of those tools that has been really changing the way that I'm thinking and approaching creating the courses, which is the primary thing that I do. But it's being used by researchers. Also, sorts of people have developed different workflows. I'm sure you can find lots of examples of people using this. There's a ton more. I mean, I am so scratching the surface. There's a whole tag engine. There's a whole search functionality. The graph view is pretty cool, but it really starts making you think about, how do I approach not just writing, but what's my workflow? Like, how can I make this a more efficient process for the writing part of what I'm doing? And as you can see, like I dropped in legit, Visual Studio Code projects, like stuff with a ton of code in it. It didn't care. It indexed it. And now it's accessible to me, and it's really changing. Do I have the, okay, so there's some questions happening, but I'm going to get to them in just a minute. Actually, no, this is probably a good point to look at questions. So do you have the sync and publish add-ons? In this version, I don't think I have those turned on, or at least I only installed for this demo the one, the community plugin that was Canva board. It's the only thing that I have installed. So I don't know if that's let's see, a sync and publish add-on. But yeah, so there's a lot of add-ons. I know that there's a sync version of this. So as I mentioned, the reason I like it is because it works off of local files. This is good for privacy if you're writing, if you're not ready to put your writing out there, if you're writing something maybe more personal, Notion will put everything in the database and manage it for you, which is great. But sometimes you don't want to necessarily share that, or perhaps you're working on some sensitive data. So I didn't mention this, but so this is free. You can pay for a version that automatically syncs the data for you. That'll be good if you're working maybe with different people, multiple, machines. Like I often this is literally the machine that I use for the streamcasts. So I don't have those turned on, and I haven't bought them yet. I think that I would be investing them, and the one reason is because it also lets you, the sync plugin would also let you work on your iPad on the documents. So that could be really useful for writing if I didn't want to take my laptop somewhere. So yeah, I don't have that on. So this is actually a great segue. We're like in the Q&A part of the show, so feel free. I'm gonna just quickly scroll through things and see. Okay, good. Back. Okay, super. Let's see. So I'm just going through the different questions, see if there's anything else. So feel free to drop something in. So yeah, going back to your MFA, I think this is I did do a master's. So yeah, it's such a great writing tool. And what's interesting is one of the things that I'm doing now is that you'll notice that as I'm working on a course, I'm actually just dropping my whole projects in there. So this is the current course that I'm working on, and this is actually my entire project. So I have, there's like a node modules folder in here, which I wish it'd let you not index the node modules, because that's definitely messy. It would save itself a lot of time. But yeah, these are actual, like you can see slides for some of my other projects that I've done, my entire blog. So literally the folder that I would normally open in VS Code and that builds my blog is just all in here. So they encourage you to kind of put all your work in one folder. and then manage everything from there. And it's scary at first, but it actually is beautiful. Notice that, say, for example, if I want to create a connection, if I hit the double bracket, it brings up everything that I've ever written, and I can start typing something in here. So Bootstrap, and it'll just automatically look through the stuff that I've written to show me all the documents that are relevant to that search. So I didn't show you that, but that is pretty awesome. Second in my I haven't seen second. Hold up. Whoa, I'm going too fast here. So hey, Mark, a friend of mine. So are there ways to sync Obsidian installation without paying for it? Yes. So there are some plugins that'll let you do this. I just dropped it in my Dropbox. And so if you just drop it in some sort of existing thing like Dropbox or Box or whatever, it'll just sync it like it normally would. It's just a folder full of files. They do have to be indexed by Obsidian when it first runs. And you can also use Git. Like there is actually a plugin that will push all the content to Git. Yeah, you can find ways of syncing it without paying for it. I'm not sure that it's that much more setup. I don't know that Dropbox. I think that you may need to re-index whenever you go to like a different machine. So yeah, it's not maybe as good. It does create like a .obsidian sort of folder. So if you are adding that into like a project, if you're just say like if I wanted to do my blog in here, I would have to make sure that in my gitignore files I add the .obsidian folder, because that's actually the index of all the files, all the plugins, everything is kind of in this hidden folder. Other than that, that's all the sort of additional data all gets stored in that special folder. Am I into Second Brain? No, I don't think so. I think this is a process for organizing like your thoughts. I haven't looked into it, but now that I'm in here, I am really exploring, how I can best suit my workflow to how this tool works. And as I mentioned so far, it's my gosh, it's hands down the best thing that I have found to manage how I work, which the number one thing for me is I don't really care. I love Notion. It does sort of let you do markdown, but it takes control of the files, and I can't handle like manually switching to markdown view. I just need everything to always be markdown, because for me, that's how I think. The fact that it adds all this like Kanban functionality, to do functionality, there's ways to insert like charts, all kinds of cool stuff that you can do. Like there's a plugin for if you have code in there, it'll actually give you like a copy button, syntax highlights the code. So I think so far this is the closest thing I found to perfection. So I haven't looked at Second Brain. Documentation also should. Yeah, this is I mean, I guess pretty much what I'm doing when I do a course is sort of like documentation. So I'm not showing you quite enough how the graphing kind of works, that graph view, but it's pretty cool. So I can, for example, take a look at this to-do list and do a local graph. So this is just a local version of the current page and how those links are related to one another, right? And you can kind of move this around and take a look at how the links have. So imagine that you actually had a lot more sort of other links within your documents. This would be a lot crazier. I think that if I do, let's close this out actually, and do. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not showing you my screen again. So if I am in a document, like say that I am in, let's see, work courses, this Tailwind course, and I was in my like TOC document, I can jump in and show you just a local graph of this, and you can take a look at the nodes. And so if this had more complicated, you can jump to the different documents like this too. But if you had more complicated research or documentation, this would just link everything to everything else, which is super powerful. And there is just a regular like graph, open graph view. This is pretty cool. It actually showing you everything that you linked and how it's connected to everything that you have written. So now you can see the relationship between like these different nodes. and what they are in a really huge macro view. And notice that it's got super powerful ways to like filter things, and how you can see how the tags are also related to one another. Yeah, and you can, of course, micromanage this by just putting in some search terms. So this is really popular. I'm not really that writing anything with a ton of relationships quite yet, but it's a beautiful visualization for one. And a lot of people love this sort of graph view to take a look at the relationships in their sort of like bigger documents. So there's so much stuff in there. So check it out, and I think you'll like it. It looks like I have like 9 more minutes. And again, the fact that for me, like the big selling point is the fact that it's just Markdown, just a lot of stuff built in on top of Markdown. So there was a couple of things that I wanted to show you. I have just a self plug in. I have a new course I did. Let's see, LinkedIn. So if you go to so if you go to my courses, I did this new course called GitHub Code Challenges. Now I know that GitHub isn't like a coding language, but I have, if you're into like sort of challenges, I'm doing like essentially how do you do all these different things in GitHub, and that just released this week. Next week, I'm actually going to be doing another episode of the Toolbox with like my top Git and GitHub tips. We'll talk about like interactive rebasing and maybe some of these things from this course. One of the things that I love about this course is that it has this cool animation and awesome background music. So it's a fun course, and the sort of techniques are pretty short. So I do things like show you how to create actions on a schedule, how to use hidden secrets. That trick that I showed you that other tool did, the flat base or the flat sort of data tool, I actually run you through that to like grab some data from like Google Fonts, create a local JSON file, and output that locally, and then do something with that data. So that is in here. So I'll be sharing some more of that stuff. If you look at my profile, you can see the links. And again, just go to rabo.org at the end of this. Not really, give me some time to like push the thing. I have to fix some things in there. And just you'll see the links to everything. So don't worry if you don't have the links. Also, this will be, you can watch the replay if you missed any part of it later on as well. And if you just go to a LinkedIn to my profile, you should be able to see like a list of this. This is going to be called new Git and GitHub tips you should know next week. So I do this thing called occasionally the launch. Whenever I launched a new what do you call it? A new course, I like to do like a little launch celebration, and that's what this is. So make sure you check that out. My friend Morton is also doing now. If you go to LinkedIn Learning, so LinkedIn Learning, there's actually a cool little section on the homepage that shows you all of the different streams that are available. My friend Morton has a cool one happening tomorrow. So you can see like there's a couple of shows happening today, including this one. I don't know. I guess somebody else is doing one at the same time. Oh, well, maybe there won't be that many developers there. But my friend Morton is doing one tomorrow. So you may want to sign up for that one. Making sense of Protopia Futures with Monica, and I will totally kill that name, Bielskite. So check that out. That should be pretty fun. Morton is a good friend and pretty smart, and he talks to lots of super smart people. And so that should be a good show. And you can sign up for and attend the event. It'll send you like a reminder, just like you probably did for this one. Other than that, let's see. There's a couple more questions before we have like 5 more minutes. So Obsidian, let's go back to Obsidian is like a rock, and you have to scroll down to actually get here to back to the website. So let's see, we have, do you think there's a plugin like this or a script that can be applied to a wiki that functions like this? I'm not sure. Wikipedia, no, I think, Wikipedia has like a whole entire engine. So one of the things that I recently found is that they're actually going to be using Vue.js as their engine for interactivity. So I think you're going to see a lot of really cool things added to Wikipedia that are going to change the product. It feels like almost like a static site. They have their own database, like almost like a SQL type of language that lets you use an API to query things. And I think in a previous episode I covered, that there's actually like a GitHub repo with that allows you to query that Wikipedia to extract things like movie listings and stuff like that. And if I didn't do that, I should not plug my site, but if you go to rabo.org, I added a new section. So I post about a lot of cool tools on LinkedIn pretty much every weekday. Weekends are off for everyone. Take a break, enjoy your family. But one of the things that I didn't like is that they kept on getting, like, all these things that I post about kept on getting lost. So I added this new section called Shorts onto my website. And it's essentially all of the different little links that I talk about. So you can find all, like, for example, Obsidian. If it's not there already, it should be getting there soon. So you can look at all these cool little tools. It's taken me a while to actually add everything, but I'll definitely add if I can't really find the one that I'm talking about. But I'm sure it's on my list of things to add in here. So I remember that I did a post on that. But I don't see it in there. There's like 3 pages right now. Eventually there'll be like, I don't know, 20. Also, and if you want to find something on my site, I built this Vue.js little search thing. So, for example, you could just type in, this is why I put this on my site. I was having a hard time exactly what's going on. Like, somebody says, hey, what about this tool that you talked about? I'm like, oh man, I can't remember where that post is, or, I usually use Publer to schedule things. So this just, if I dump them on my site, then you can just come in here and look at really not just shorts, but this is a search that will take you to like any piece of content on my site. Written in Bootstrap, written in Vue.js too. I do need to update it. Oof, it's just hard to maintain things sometimes. So let's see. Cool. So thank you for attending. I guess that's going to be it for this week. I'm sure I might think of other things that I want to talk to you about. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm available just about anywhere at linkedin.com/planet of the web. So hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks for attending today.